And welcome to tonight's edition of the One Hood Power Hour. I am your co-host, Kahari Mosley, here with my trusty partner, Miracle Jones. I'm happy to be back. It's been a couple weeks since I've been on. I was on vacation, as well as doing back-to-school nights and other things that parents with school-age children do around this time of the year. You know, as the calendar turns from summer to fall, this Monday will be Labor Day, and the election hiatus that ended in May with the primary election will be over, and we'll be kicking back into gear with back into the full political season. So there'll be a lot to talk about tonight, as well as a very esteemed guest. Before we get into that, Miracle, you have any hot takes or any big stories we want to discuss before we bring Brandi Fisher from the Alliance for Police Accountability on to talk about Shuman Center?
Yeah, it's been a rough few weeks for a lot of folks, particularly this past, 72 hours. The people in the Gulf because of Hurricane Ida, Louisiana, Mississippi, a little bit of Texas. I was in the path of the hurricane. We've seen heavy winds. People have been tweeting the locations because of flooding and waiting for people to really come and rescue them. So we're seeing the intersections of disability justice, climate change, infrastructure, all type of things really come to a head with this hurricane. And we're really starting to see why it's very important that we have not only mutual aid organizations, politicians, community organizers, and activists, from all over connected, but why we really have to be advocating for supports for Black and Brown communities. A lot of Black people were stuck in various places in Louisiana. Were not able to evacuate due to COVID-19 really taking over hospitals. A lot of hospitals in Louisiana also were not able to evacuate because COVID-19 patients, particularly those who are believed to be unvaccinated, have really been, for lack of a better term, flooding hospitals. And so there aren't even spaces for people to evacuate. So we're seeing, knock and rescue missions. We're seeing whole communities without power, without water. We're seeing a lot of people in need and who have really no other avenue but then to go to social media for help and support. And so that's been, I think, at the tops of hearts and minds for a lot of folks. But then also, as you mentioned at the top of the hour, the schools, right? Schools are, on a lot of people's minds. For some people, today was the first day of school. For some other, this is the second week. For PPS, they're starting this weekend. And of course, if you've been paying attention, we saw hundreds, if not thousands, of Pitt students partying over the weekend. And so we know that there's over 1,000 COVID cases right now at the Allegheny County Health Department. We had over 900 just in the last 24 hours. And so that is also, I think, leaving people kind of stumped and astonished in what are our next steps, because all of our government officials have already said they're not going to do another lockdown, but we're really starting to see a huge issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to touch again on, the situation in Louisiana, a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to travel to New Orleans with my wife, Chelsea, who you all know is the Allegheny County Controller, and she was part of a cohort of women elected leaders as part of Governing Magazine, and we had the opportunity to actually visit the Levee facility in New Orleans and see the upgrades that they made on the flood prevention system, and it's literally a fortress that surrounds the city. It was a multi-million-dollar project, and as we've seen, the city of New Orleans has not sustained the same level of devastation, even though power is out in New Orleans, and there is a potential that it could be out for the next 7 to 10 days, which is a huge problem. But much like you said, in the areas surrounding New Orleans Parish, in that part of Louisiana, we have seen just many devastating stories of those places that haven't had that same infrastructure investment. But if there's any indication about the importance of infrastructure investment, is the fact that New Orleans, hasn't seen the same level of devastation that they clearly saw in Katrina because of the because of the infrastructure investments that have been made over the last 15 years, and the kind of multi layers of protection that have been put in place to protect the city of New Orleans, and to see, the fifth most powerful hurricane in the history of Louisiana not, have that kind of impact other than, the outage of power, is a testament to why we need more infrastructure investment, not less.
Facts. And, we just had that, 1.3 trillion or $1.7 trillion, infrastructure bill. And we're still like awaiting, for this last, step for Congress to pass it and Biden to make it become really law, and people started to get this money. But that shows it's going to be like 5 to 10 years for a lot of these things to be built, and we don't have time. There's flooding, there's tornadoes. We also have these fire tornadoes happening in California. And so, whether it's the climate crisis, where it's lack of infrastructure, whether it's the intentional lack of investment, or even the divestment of support in Black and Brown neighborhoods, we are really seeing that it's a policy choice. It's a policy failure for Black and Brown people to be dying every time there is a natural disaster. The reason this is happening is there's lack of support, there is lack of resources. And I hope that, New Orleans could be the blueprint for a lot of this infrastructure. People to know, okay, this is what we have to do to protect, our communities, and build up better infrastructure. But also, we're literally still seeing the election play out. And today it was announced that a judge is not running for retention. So now, instead of having the opportunity to elect 9 judges at the Court of Common Pleas, we now have the opportunity to elect 10. And we have until September 13th to figure out who that 10th person is going to be. So if we're already inundated with so much stuff around the election. Here comes another position that is in play. In addition to so many other people and candidates that are already announcing, not only for November of 2021, but also May of 2022. So it's going to be a long, hopefully, engaging and fun 6 months.
Right. Yeah. And then just to touch on the soon to be vacancy with Judge Guido DeAngelis announcing his resignation from the bench. From what I understand about the process, the officers of the various wards and municipalities of the Democratic Committee, so those are familiar with the ward and municipal system, each ward in the city of Pittsburgh, which are 32 wards, and each municipality in Allegheny County has a Democratic chair, a Democratic vice chair, a treasurer, and a secretary. And those make up the officers of the ward or the municipal committee. Those 4 officers of the 32 wards and of the 100+ committees around the county will be the voting body to determine who the Democratic nominee for the 10th seat will be. There is an effort right now to begin to engage that voting body in support of various, candidates. So it'll be very interesting to see how, that all plays out. But before we get into, I guess I did want to just take an opportunity to talk a little bit about this weekend, because I know you, Jasiri, had an opportunity to spend some time in DC, and I was back here doing some stuff. So I wanted to give an opportunity to give the folks a quick rundown first on, what you participated in DC, and then what, and all the stuff that kept me back in Pittsburgh as well.
It's just like these governments really won't let us just have a week to breathe and to relax. So in DC this past weekend, there were multiple actions going on. We went to support, Until Freedom, Black Voters Matter Fund, and some other organizations who are demanding the passage of the John Lewis voting rights bill. We know that for over the past 4 years, even since the Supreme Court kind of rolled back the voting rights provisions, Black and brown people have literally seen their ability and access to voting taken away and chopped bit by bit. Thousands of polling places have been closed where Black and brown people vote. We saw this past election cycle people waiting over 10 hours to vote. And so we're advocating and supporting the passage of this new voters' rights legislation. And so we went down to DC to be in support. Jasiri was able to perform, as a socially conscious arts-based organization who believe in using art to push a message. They had asked Jasiri to perform, so he performed a couple of songs. But also what was happening, the impacted families, over 200 families whose loved ones were murdered by police were marching. In addition, the Al Sharpton's organization was doing a voting rights push. And HBCU students and alums were also marching to demand a cancellation of all student debt, because there is a belief that President Biden can really, with the stroke of a pen, cancel all student debt, all federal student debt, I should say. And so there was a march to have him do that. So it was a very busy weekend. And then you, of course, also had an even busier weekend here. Also, shout out to you and Selecta doing your debut, coming back after your hiatus. So how was that?
Yeah, that was super cool. We had a very few weekend. I'll end with the return. I'll start with a shout out to Sean Gibson and the Gibson family. Sean Gibson from the Josh Gibson Foundation hosted the first annual Josh Gibson Classic Youth Baseball Tournament. For those who are not familiar with Josh Gibson, he was the catcher for the Pittsburgh Crawford and the Homestead Grays, considered the home run king, considered one of the 5 greatest baseball players that ever lived, but never got the opportunity to play in the major leagues due to the structural racism that was part of Major League Baseball until Jackie Robinson came into Major League Baseball in 1947. It was we were at Josh Gibson Field in the Hill District, and for those who know, I am the president of an AAU baseball team called the Eastburg Avengers, and we won the championship of the tournament. But more important than that, the young people from the 6 teams, including a team from Buena Vista, Georgia, which is the birthplace of Josh Gibson, drove up from Buena Vista 14 hours to participate and see the city. We went to the University of Pittsburgh, Cost Field, and had a meet and greet with the University of Pittsburgh's baseball team. And then they went down to PNC Park on Friday night to watch the Pirates and the Cardinals play. It was Josh Gibson night. And actually, my son Thaddeus got an opportunity to go onto the field representing our organization. And then also, while we were at the University of Pittsburgh, my father, who many know as a sculptor, but he's also in the 1950s a sports writer for the Pittsburgh Courier, worked with like Bill Nunn and Teenie Harris. And he's also like you, a miracle. He is an alum of the illustrious University of Pittsburgh, class of 1950, School of Journalism, and so he actually spoke to, excuse me, I would say 50 or 60 youngsters that participated in the tournament about his personal experiences watching the Negro League players play. As many know, my dad's 95, so he was a youngster in the 1930s during the heyday of the Negro Leagues and had an opportunity as a young boy to see Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson and many of the other giants and kind of baseball immortals that participated in the Negro Leagues, many who are now enshrined in the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. So that was really a great experience for even the Pitt baseball players and even the coaches, and many of whom have heard, many stories about the Negro Leagues, but have never really met someone who, actually witnessed seeing many of these people that you've read about and heard about so often actually play in real life. And so, my dad was all over Facebook this weekend, and, he doesn't own a computer. He doesn't have an email address or anything. So we thought that was pretty funny. And then, as many know, Saturday night over at BJ's Event Center, part of what we call the Young Brothers Bar Complex in Woods Run, me and Selecta, also known as James Scaletti, who's on 91.3 WYEP Grand Groove, as well as very known all over town as a dope DJ, an old friend of mine. We performed for the first time in 5 years, and we're working on a project right now, and we'll be doing a performance sometime again soon, because the people that were there were clamoring, for us to do it again. And I've been getting a lot of shout outs over the past few days of people that wish they could have been there and heard it went really well. So thanks for everyone. Thank you to Young Brothers. Thank you for Paradise Gray for hosting, as well. But also, love to my brother Selector. Love to the Young Brothers, Keith and Jamie Younger, who always hold me down. And everybody, who came out that night, particularly all the alumni from Perry Traditional Academy. I had a bunch of my classmates from Perry, particularly class of 94, which I'm from, that came out to show love. So, Perry pride is always in the building. And then yesterday, like I said, our baseball team played 3 games in 90-degree heat and brought home the championship. Shout out to my son who threw a no-hitter yesterday in the quarterfinal round. And all the youngsters from Eastburg, Coach Kenny, Coach Kevin, Coach Lonnie, and Coach Ron, who helped out all weekend, and Sean Gibson, of course, and Castor Binion from the Housing Authority, that was the lead sponsor for the event.
So it was a lot of stuff happening, and unfortunately, one of the things that happened the past week that has galvanized a lot of folks while we were traveling and doing different things was this kind of surprise announcement to some and shocking to others, was this intention of the county officials to close the Schumann Juvenile Detention Center. First, there was the announcement that the detention center had lost its licensing in order to not only detain, but also keep minors for an extended period of time. The state has to approve various licensings, and they announced that they were revoking the Schumann's licensing because of some issues, including unaccompanied minors, people who allegedly OD'd, different issues of safety. And then shortly after that announcement was an announcement by the county they're actually going to close the juvenile detention center. For a lot of folks, people had mixed reviews. But what people need to understand about the Schumann Juvenile Detention Center is that it hosts juveniles all throughout the southwestern Pennsylvania and even some Ohio regions for when people don't have facilities or their facilities are overcrowded. They send their youth here. And we are still trying to find out information about how many people are at Schumann, where they are going to go. There's been rumors of people being sent as far away as to Ohio. And so, to talk a little bit about what's going on with Schumann, the next steps, and how we can use this to push and galvanize for more abolition and community based supports for young people going through trauma and violence and finding themselves in the crosshairs of the juvenile system is none other than the incomparable Brandi Fisher, who is the founder and CEO of the Alliance for Police Accountability. And with that, we're going to welcome Brandi to the program. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And so a lot has been happening in the past even 72 hours. But where do we stand right now with the Schumann Detention Center?
Well, right now, they're still placing, children from Shuman Center to other places, and we'll continue to. I mean, there were only 20 children who were there when this announcement happened. The last I spoke to someone, which was Friday, there were 10 left. And so, what we wanted to be able to do immediately is interject in the fact that these children would be placed so far away. People don't understand that Shuman Center is a pretrial detention place. It's not a placement place. So these youth are not there, um, you know, after being tried and found guilty of something and then sentenced to some time to spend. And that's like the misconception about Shuman Center. It really is the place where people are held until, where children are held until it's decided, what to do with them. And so in this process, instead of them being home or close to home with their families, they're being sent to places like Latrobe. There was even talks about Steubenville, Ohio. And the issue is, they have to go to court. And so, who doesn't want to be with their child? And why would we want to send children so far away from their family? It just seems very unconscionable. But when you're working with a system, that we are looking at bodies as numbers and not as human beings. Um, and I just wanted to highlight, we recently got a letter from someone who is incarcerated currently. He's a juvenile lifer. And he was talking about the use of the word juvenile and how it strips the humanity away from youth. And so I just wanted to say on this platform that one thing that we have adopted at his ask is, as much as it makes sense, is to use the word children instead of juveniles, because that is what, we use this language, the system use this language. You read some school policies, instead of calling them students, they call them suspects. It's just the language already, has people looking and thinking at young people a certain way instead of actually who and what they really are. And so, we use suspects instead of students. We use juveniles instead of children, to somehow dehumanize and to take us away from the reality that these are really kids.
Thank you for that. So, could you give us a bit, of context about how we got, to this point? As we mentioned, for those who are just joining us, we're on with Brandi Fisher from APA talking about the situation at Shuman Center that's been in the news. Specifically about the announcing of the revoking of the license, and then later the announcement of the county of not appealing it and allowing the facility to close. So, what has been happening, at Shuman Center over, say, the last couple of years that has culminated, in this moment? If you could give us a little bit of context about how we got here.
I mean, there's just been, several violations. They've been on a provisional license for years. And so, there's just been several violations in the institution, as you can imagine. I mean, we hear a lot about the violations that happen at Allegheny County Jail, but not very many people had that same microscope when it came to Shuman Center. And so when it would come time for their reports to the state, or the state going in to do reviews or inspections, there were severe violations. I mean, there's abuse, and there's abuse everywhere. There, the food that they were being fed, the treatment of children exhibiting behaviors, that um, uh, that people didn't like. People with mental health issues, children with mental health issues not receiving adequate care, and borderline torture. And so, you know, and people, when this happened, there was this advocacy from SEIU 668 as well, right? And it was about the individuals that work there losing their jobs. And when we talked about this, we grappled with, what is the ask, and what is the priority. And the priority, and as we explained to everyone involved, and also the union, hoping that they would magnify this as well, the priority first are the children, bottom line, right? I mean, if you're going to put anything in an order, the first thing we care about is the well-being of the children. Secondly, we definitely care about people having jobs, but it's almost like saying, and forgive me, those who work at Schumann who don't fall into this category, but it's almost like saying the whole argument about police officers, right? When people are crying to defund the police, and they're like, but these people need jobs, right? If you defund the police, then these people won't have jobs. And so I beg to ask the question. I don't think when slaves were on a plantation, did they care about the overseer not having a job anymore? Some jobs just shouldn't exist. And one of the things that we pushed for when we talked about Schumann Center, and it came to the people's jobs there, is to have them placed somewhere else in the county, right? No, we don't want anyone.
I think we're having some tech issues with Brandi. We're going to get her back on. But Miracle, do you have any initial reaction to some of the revelations that Brandy's been sharing about what's been going on at Schumann? Then we'll get her back on in a second.
Yeah, as we wait for Brandi to come back on, I think a lot of people, as you said, forget these are children, whether convicted or not. These are still children who are being placed in a system, primarily young African American, Black boys and girls who are being placed in this juvenile detention center, primarily being referred through PPS and for school abuse, for violations of school policies, and they're being placed at the detention center. There have been for years allegations of abuse and violence, and some people have tried to reform. Some people have tried to go in for full transparency. Our organization was an organization that was teaching like art and support to the youth, to try to talk about like mental health and ways to appropriately and adequately express yourself, so you weren't falling into a situation where you were getting in fights and disrupting at school, but also to give youth a talent and a marketable skill. We have known that there is conversations about the pricing and how much Schumann was costing the county. And when we talk about like these jobs, we also have to be very mindful of, where do we hire and where do we put people who believe that our children should be incarcerated and our children can't be rehabilitated? There's been conversations, even shockingly, about putting some of these children in Allegheny County Jail and creating space in the local jail for these children, because you also have to be mindful that sometimes uh, these kids can be 16, 17 years old and be referred because they missed a day of school. They were late, they weren't in uniform, and they got, a violation if they were already on a type of probation or an observation agreement. So there's a lot of things that happens that sends children to Schumann. It's not just people who are quote unquote committing violent, harmful crimes. Even the kids that are committing these committing crimes still need love and support and care. And also be very, I was on a call and we were talking about this. Schumann is not a treatment center, right? Our juvenile centers are only detention centers. So this idea that we're sending kids to this place in order to help them is also a lie, because they don't have the licensing to treat these kids. And now we're going to welcome Brandi back to the program. So again, I know the weather, the technology, white supremacy is always moving against us. We're gonna welcome back. So you were saying, like, some jobs just don't need to be in existence.
They don't, right? Not that some people don't deserve jobs, right? That's not the same thing. And that's what they would like to like to paint that we're saying. No, it's not that people don't deserve jobs, but some jobs don't need to exist. And when they're oppressive, when they're harmful, they don't need to exist. And we're unapologetic about stating that. And so for us, the closure of Shuman Center, um, it was a bittersweet moment for us, because it's like, yay, these institutions don't need to exist. But the bad thing about it, or the sad thing about it, is that there are no real alternatives to detention in Allegheny County, right? And out of this, that is what we need to work on, because everyone was talking about where are the children that are there going to be placed, but what happened to the child that got arrested yesterday? Where did they go? Right? We're not having that conversation. And so this is more than just about what they're doing with the youth and the babies that are in Shuman Center. It's also about what are they doing with the babies that they're arresting today. And they have no plan. And what is happening is juvenile probation is scattering, looking for beds anywhere they can find one to place a child. Opposed to taking a step back, working with community organizations, working with advocates, working with parents, and coming up with a real plan as to how we address this issue and what we can do with these children. There are so many things that we can do, right? If you're only thinking about incarceration and punishment, we're limited. But if we're thinking about growth and development, if we're thinking about, and it's not even always about rehabilitation. Like, I'm so sick of us talking about these children and people like they're the worst things in the world. Like, they're just these monsters out here. We need to be afraid and shut our doors and lock our windows. It's the same thing they told us about us releasing people from Allegheny County Jail because of the pandemic. Oh my goodness, crime is going to rise. Everybody needs to be afraid, or letting all the criminals out. These are everyday people. These are your cousins, your friends, your mom, your auntie, people who have gotten caught up in the system, because we arrest people for bullcrap reasons. We are not arresting a bunch of serial killers and rapists out here. That is not what's happening. And then we look at the majority of people who are incarcerated in Allegheny County Jail, that is not who it is. And so this is why we advocate for the things that we advocate for, because there are real alternatives for people opposed to incarceration. And if we're saying that we cannot find alternatives for 10-year-olds, if we're saying we cannot find alternatives for 15-year-olds because of them exhibiting behavior that we have criminalized, then there's something wrong with the system. And we already know there is something wrong with the system.
Well, thank you for that. Now, in the midst of this announcement, obviously the county manager, made this announcement, and obviously much of the culpability has fell upon, those who work directly at the juvenile detention center. But we know, or the children or the youth detention center, as you said earlier, have kind of borne the brunt, of the criticism. But we know this is part of the, a larger network, of county departments, part of a larger county government network that includes, the district attorney's office and the court system, as well as the leadership of county government. So beyond, the juvenile detention center, are there other folks that bear some responsibility, for this? Because it seems like the leadership and the workers at Shuman Center, which may, have culpability, seem to be bearing the brunt of it. but to me, it seems like it's part of a larger ecosystem. So could you talk a little bit about that and, you know, some of the other county entities that are part of this larger system that have contributed, you know, to this moment that we're in?
Sure. First, I just want us to be very clear about what we are talking about, and who we're talking about, and that we're talking about children, right? And I don't want us to forget that. I don't um, think or believe that it makes sense to lock children up in any way, shape, or form, right? And that there are things that we can do to help children learn um, how to make better decisions, to help them learn how to work through trauma and the results of it and the effects of it, how to learn to manage their emotions. But it takes work. You know why? Because some of us adults can't even do it. And so, there are alternatives, and so many alternatives. I've been talking to so many people, and we're going to come up with a plan, right? Because who is hurt the most in this? Who is filling up Schumann Center, right? There is also still disproportionate racially, and so so when you know that there has been a lack of investment in Schumann Center, there has been a lack of investment in in these children and helping them, and the results have been staff. And it's not giving staff a break at all, because some of them are freaking horrible. Let's just say that. Let's name that, right? I'm not afraid to say that. We know we love the unions are our friends, but some of those folks were horrible. And we have situations to show us that. But they don't deserve to take all of the blame, because some of them were working very hard, right? Very hard to help these children with very limited resources. And so that has a lot to do with it. It's like the state is, giving these sanctions, but how much investment is being made between the state and the county into this institution? And gratefully, Judge Clark, our new president judge, stated, that, she was going to try to make more equity in the system. People have been working very hard at lowering the population at Schumann Center, which is why there were only 20 people there. Um, and so they have been working very diligently at making that happen. But I did want to highlight that while the population in Schumann Center has been decreasing, the population at the Allegheny County Jail for children has been increasing, right? And so and I just want to make one thing very clear, um, because you I think Miracle mentioned it a little earlier, that some of these children from Schumann may be placed, or some of these children that may be newly arrested may be placed at Allegheny County Jail. It's ironic that that can't happen, right? It's illegal for them to place children at Allegheny County Jail unless they are tried as an adult, right? And so right now, our district attorney has decided to try 25 children, 25 of young 25 young people as adults who are currently sitting. I think it's 32 now. I was corrected the other day. 32 children who are currently at Allegheny County Jail, waiting to be tried. And so, just because the law or a piece of paper says we can try them as an adult according to whatever this crime is that we said that they committed, doesn't mean that these children have the development and the capability to be held totally responsible for all that they are being, penalized for. And so, accountability is important, but so is the opportunity to learn from your mistakes and to grow from them.
Miracle, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, and we'll put the Allegheny County Jail dashboard in the comments momentarily. But we're looking at some of the community visions, and to put in the chat, we did have this reimagining public safety where we have demanded at minimum like 50 million to come and to support community resources. What are some of the visions you're hearing from community members about what they would like the future placements to look like, the future community treatment centers to look like, and what are some of the ways that we need to be galvanizing to support these children?
I have talked to people. One of the main things that the juvenile probation can do is partner and have contracts with new programs, right? They can partner with new programs, um, and develop new programs for these young people. They could partner with One Hood, right? Um, and the children or a child can go there and have to, you can have a workforce development program, where that child now is mandated to spend these hours at a place, right? They're in a location, but they're also learning skills. They're being poured into, invested into, and it may be the opportunity and the one thing they need to change their life, right? They can have evening reporting centers. Um, they can have delinquency shelter programs for kids who can't go home because sometimes there's some family issues, right? And children aren't able to go home. We can step out of the box and partner with um, a second chance with which does kinship care, which means these are children who are placed with someone who are in their family, right? You can develop a program, under that program where children are placed with someone who may not be where they live, but someone in the family. There's so many things and so many alternatives that we can do. But first, the main thing is that we need to advocate for the juvenile probation to immediately start increasing their contract with existing community programs or organizations, because that way we don't have the argument that we don't have a place for them because their existing contracts are full. It doesn't mean that those have to be the only contracts. Add more. So you can have more alternatives and more opportunities. We don't have to be bound by this. And that's why it's important for us to have these discussions, and to have these conversations, because what is put out in the news, what is put out by the county, people feel like that is the only option. Those are the only things that we can do because we're not taught to think outside the box. We're taught to think within the confinements of the system. But we need to think outside of the system and think about different things that can be done. And so there are a bunch of things that can be done. There will be an email going out to many organizations tomorrow. I've been talking to, Kathy Elliott at Gwen's Girls. I've been talking to some folks at the county. I've been talking to a few people so we can come together because, this woke a lot of people up, and let people be aware of what's happening. But what we can't do is stop and not think about the children who are right now possibly being arrested and nobody knows where they're going or what's going on. We need to come together immediately and come up with a plan that is one that is not based on punishment, but one that is based on really, bettering, the young people that we find being troubled by these situations.
Yeah, and before you go, could you share any particular information about actions that folks can participate in, or actions that folks can take, around this issue, and where they can go to get more information, or where they can get more engaged?
Well, we should be having a petition coming out either tomorrow or Wednesday, with some of these suggestions, and the positions of the community, and what we feel like should happen, and a request to work with the existing bodies to ensure, and with a timeline. And so we'll be sending that out to all of our community partners. So you can find it on APA's website, APA's Facebook page. Also, you can find it on One Hood's page because we're going to send it to y'all. And I know Miracle's going to share it. So you can just find it right here as well, since you're already here. Because for us, we just want people to get the information. And we also want the county to see, often as advocates, people like to say, that's a small group of people asking for this. That's only that organization that cares about this. That's only that person. And so that's why petitions are important, because it shows that there's a wide range of people who care about this issue, and who care about what happens to these children.
Perfect. And we did put your website in the chat so people can follow up and reach out with you directly. So thank you so much, Brandi, for coming on. Please go enjoy the rest of your evening, because we know, like I said, Black people deserve rest too, and a lot of, we can't always be in trauma and fighting. So please enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Take care.
Yeah, and so this is an issue that we're going to be following, for a minute. Also, people need to understand Pennsylvania is a once adult, always an adult state. And so that means that if you are under the age of 18, if you've ever been tried as an adult, no matter what your infraction is going forward, your punishment comes from an adult. So if it's you were caught smoking a cigarette, you were caught vaping, you were outside on curfew, you got a uniform infraction, all of those charges then put you in the Allegheny County Jail because you're considered an adult and an adult violation because you're on adult probation. And that is one of the things we need to understand. So as PPS starts school this week, as all of these kids are coming back during a global pandemic where everyone's mental health is like we're afraid, and we know conflict is going to happen. We have to be very mindful of what, as Brandi says, is happening to our kids and children. So we want to thank her, Fawn Walker Montgomery, Liv Bennett, Kathy Elliott, all of these women who have been really taking this up and trying to figure out what the next steps for our children. We just want to thank them for doing that. And so, yeah, it's a lot.
Absolutely, and for those out there that got something cool going on tonight, I suggest you tweet Questlove from the Roots. He's currently looking for fun things to do on a Monday night in Pittsburgh. So get on the Twitter machine and tweet where you're at. If it's jumping off somewhere in the greater Pittsburgh area, let Questlove from the Roots know. For those who have tickets like myself, will be at Stage AE tomorrow night, checking out the Roots. But I guess now, again, thank you, Brandi, for joining us. In our last 10 minutes, we're just going to talk a little bit about some of the events coming up over the next few weeks. Starting with this Sunday, we'll be doing the kickoff of our fall campaign. Get out to vote, voter education, voter engagement, voter turnout with One Hood Power. It is going to be this Sunday, September 5th at Highland Park, near the entrance, right in the what they call the entry garden, right beyond the entrance at North Highland and Bunker Hill Street. We got DJ QRX. We're going to have a food truck, voter registration information. There's going to be a lot of candidates in the house as well. So you'll be getting more information about that throughout the week. And then on September 13th, we will be kicking off our fall candidate series. And we are going to be having a virtual candidate forum with the 4 Democratic candidates for the judicial offices. That would be Judge Maria McLaughlin for Supreme Court, Judge Tamika Lane for Superior Court, and Judges Lori Dumas and Allegheny County's own Judge David Spurgeon for Commonwealth Court. And we're going to have a very, very, very enlightening conversation with them about those races as well. And as you know, as always, candidates across the spectrum get invited, but the ones who join us are the ones who say yes and show up. So we're very much looking forward to that conversation. So what are some other things that we have coming down the pike, Miracle?
I'm excited for this mayoral debate. We have everyone who's running for mayor has been invited. People have confirmed. So I'm very excited for that. Another thing we're talking about is if you are a candidate who is running for office, please, we'll post again publicly. Our candidate questionnaire is just for us to get in contact with your campaign. We understand when people first register, sometimes they don't have their websites and emails set up, so we can't always get in contact with them. People change managers, people change communication folks. If you're running for any office in Pennsylvania, any office, whether it's sheriff, judge of elections, whatever it is, please fill out this candidate contact questionnaire. Traditionally, what we do is we go to the Board of Elections. They put out the information. We go and we research and we try to call people and get people's information. It takes a long time. Sometimes the cell phone number doesn't have a voicemail. So please if you're running for any office in Pennsylvania, so we can get in contact with you, so we can have the forms, so we can invite you onto the shows. We have forms, we have the Sunday night sit downs. Please fill that out. Another thing is we are not endorsing candidates. We do a questionnaire. We put the questionnaire out to the public so they can make an informed decision. That is how we engage, and we believe in empowering, educating, and engaging folks. We want to alleviate conflicts of interest. We know a lot of candidates. We love a lot of these candidates personally, and we think to be as fair and as transparent as possible is we share our values with the community, and if the community's values are in line with ours, that's who they'll go and support. And so that's how we try to engage, the campaign. We know there are a lot of people running. We want to have you meet all of them, talk to all of them. That's why we're hosting these events. But we understand that's just how we are engaging people this election cycle. Next election, it may be different, but that's how we're engaging this election cycle. Another thing is for Sunday, wear your mask. Please. We want to have this event. We're not trying to have a super spreader event. Please, even though we're going to be outside, please wear your mask. Please wash your hands. We'll have, stuff available. We understand people get comfortable. You're going to be eating food. Masks will come off. But please just come with the intention to, follow the CDC guidelines as much as possible. Your health is our utmost priority. So I think that's very important. We're going to have a really amazing turnout. We're going to have food, we have vegan food, vegetarian food, pescatarian food. We have food for everybody from Jamaican Vibes. And so we want people, for Caribbean Vibes. It's Kimmy, we love her and her team. So please just make sure you're protecting yourself. We know some people aren't vaccinated. Some people can't get vaccinated. So please ask people to wear masks if they're able to do so. We understand that some people are not able to due to, various disabilities and breathing issues, but we want people to become as safe and protected as possible. Back to you, Kari.
Absolutely. So thank you for that. Yeah, so like Miracle said, we have a lot of stuff coming down the pike. And Producer John, if you could pull up the graphic with the full slate of candidate forums for the fall season, just so we can run down those really quick for folks. Again, as you can see, on September 13th, we have the statewide judicial candidates. On September 20th, school board. On September 27th, a magisterial district judge candidates. And as Miracle alluded to, on the 4th of October, mayoral candidates. On October 11th, city and county council candidates. And on October 18th, the slate of 5. That started as a slate of 8. And now we have the slate of 5 that will be joining us, that made it through the primary. And that is our fall candidate forum series. So in our last couple minutes, Miracle, you have any closing remarks or parting shots before we adjourn until next Monday?
Yes. So we will be posting probably on next Monday, a week out from the election, a Google form so people can ask questions to our panelists. We understand that there are a lot of holidays coming up, a lot of holidays where people are going to be going on vacation, people are going to be traveling. All of our events, we live stream them, but we also store them on our website, as well as our Facebook and our YouTube pages. And so we want people to be as engaged as possible. We'll put the questions out. We'll, we know people really care a lot about issues. So please, that's the way to get your questions out if you can't watch live. Another thing is there are people you want us to talk to, right? people you like, I would really, really love if One Hood Power could interview person A, person B, person C. Please reach out to us. We do send emails all the time to elected officials, people from all walks of life, from all, backgrounds, independents, conservatives, Republicans, Democrats, progressive, liberals. Some people just can't make it because of their schedule. Some people may not see our emails. Some people may be de facto boycotting us. It doesn't matter. We still reach out to them. So if there's anyone that you would like us to talk with, sit down with, please just send us an email, a DM. We're very approachable. We'll send out for things. We have some great things coming down. I'm very excited about some stuff we're doing in person and virtually. So please, stay tuned to One Hood Power. We're growing, we're expanding. It's very, a very exciting time for those who believe in electoral politics, but also for people who want to volunteer. Please reach out. We need about 40 volunteers between now and November for a variety of things. We'll also be hiring some folks to engage, do some work. So please make sure you're following us on all of our social media accounts or reaching out to engage folks. Last thing before I turn it back over to Kari to close out. As a reminder, in Pennsylvania, if you are a person who has been convicted of a crime and you are no longer serving your sentence, you are not on paper, you're not on parole, regardless of federal, state, or whatever, please make sure you're talking to your probation and your parole officers because you are legally, particularly for state offenses, you are allowed to register to vote and to vote in the election. For federal cases, usually you have to be off, and as long as your underlying offense was not against election procedures, you are also allowed to register to vote at the close of your sentence. So we want to make sure that our impacted family members are registering to vote, are engaged in the process. For those of you who cannot vote, whether it's because you're not a resident, you're not a citizen, or you're still serving various, time because of your sentence, you can still volunteer, so you can still get the word out. You can still learn about issues. You can still write and talk to your elected officials because we want everyone to be involved and everyone to feel empowered to advocate for the solutions that they believe will impact and improve their lives and the lives of their community. So we want everyone to get involved. We welcome all people to help build our table and into our vision. As long as you believe in the freedom and the liberation of Black and brown folks, we're going to work with you. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to Kari.
Thank you, Miracle, and my just final words, just reminding folks that onehoodpower.org is live. So for those who want to visit us online, you can go there. And for those who would like to donate, we do take donations, and we appreciate the financial support that we get so we can continue to do the program. Up on the right, on the top right banner, you can click on right to our Act Blue page, and you can go on there and make a donation to our organization. And with that, I want to say thank you to our guests for this evening, Brandi Fisher from the Alliance for Police Accountability, for joining us to talk about Shuman Center. And definitely, again, if there's something cool that's going on in the greater Pittsburgh area tonight, hop on the Twitter machine and let Brother Questlove from the Roots know. And if you have a ticket to the show tomorrow night, I will see you down at Stage AE, enjoying the legendary Roots crew. The 215th Dynasty will be in the place. So hopefully, Quest and Black Thought and the crew have a good time tonight, and have a good time tomorrow. We'll all have a good time, tomorrow over at Stage E. And with that, want to thank folks. I guess, do we have anything else any other programming that we want to share before we bid adieu?
Yes. Yesterday I had the pleasure of working with the Pittsburgh Palestine Solidarity Committee to talk about tear gas, and why that's an issue that impacts Pennsylvania. So please go to our YouTube and watch that. Also, we had the honor for our next Sunday night sit down with Representative Mark Takano out in California. He has a groundbreaking history making elected official. And we were going to have a conversation with him for next Sunday for tonight's sit down. So we're very excited about that. Also, Wednesday this week in white supremacy, Thursday on Tilt, our whole One Hood Media Network, programming. Please make sure you're tuning in. We thank you all. Please be safe. Bunker down, and we will see y'all back next Monday at 7 p.m.
Thanks so much for joining us. Have a good night.